Whew. All right, it's Monday. It's a loaded Monday. Um, hmm, I have already moved on to cold iced coffee this morning. All right, it's June 30th. We're just like a day away from July. July happens to be the most awesome month in the world. It's my birthday. And there is I'm going on vacation, so it's the first time I've been able to have a vacation in 8 years. Most of all of us here at Collision Hub will sort of be out of pocket for the whole week. Melanie is going to Wisconsin, so she's going to be up in Wisconsin, which is really cool because there's a brewery up there that makes a beer called the Spotted Cow, and I absolutely love it. She's driving up there for her family vacation, to which I was like, bring back the Spotted Cow. But we're all around here. Avery's just going to take off and stay home for a week, but all of us are going to be pretty much out of pocket for the week. So this is like my last thing to do before I get to like not completely turn off the phones, but it's kind of gonna have to be an emergency before I jump back in. All right, I got a lot to talk about. I'm going to make some people extremely angry. Well, I'm not going to make them angry. They're already angry. I don't like them. They don't like me. There's no love lost there. But I am going to address some things pretty much head on today, which is what I am known for. It's sort of like my superpower. Some of the things that we're going to cover today is CCC customers. There's a lot of them getting cancellation notices and letters, and we'll walk through that and talk about it a little bit. I had asked CCC for a statement. I reached out to Dan Risley. I got nothing back from him. I waited about 2 weeks. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover it. I don't blame him. I probably wouldn't respond either. We're going to talk about SCRS's misleading press releases that they've been sending out about iCar, and then an email that came out from the Texas Autobody Association. We're just going to address it, and I'm going to give you guys a little back history on what's going on there. Progressive has taken over as the number one. Monster and CareerBuilder.com have gone bankrupt. When we talk about how everybody's looking for a job right now in this economy, scanning cars at the airport, a Massachusetts storage lawsuit that settled on behalf of the insurer, which is interesting. And then we've added we have lots of equipment on our website that you can purchase. I don't want to say lots. I got 5 or 6 things. And then we have some paint guns and some things available through SADA. But there's an equipment section of our website it's not a profit thing. So we're not like a distributor or what would I call it? We're not like a distributor of equipment or anything. But we've added the peel wheel. I love that tool. I love the technician that invented that, and he's selling it. So it's kind of like the same thing that I feel about Collision Edge products. So Tim Briggs and Ginger Briggs and the tape thing and the bit viewer boards. I just love it when technicians invent things, and they have it for our industry. So I'm gonna help him sell it. I don't know how much help I'll be. He does a really, really good job of selling that thing on his own online. And then we'll talk about a what's on the shelf thing. So, well, let's get into it because I'm really looking forward into some of these things that we're going to cover today. All right, let's talk about CCC canceling people. I want to give a little bit of a backstory here, just so that I think the bad thing about this industry, which is also how this SCRS mess has happened, is that a lot of people don't keep track of the news and what's gone on in the industry, and so they don't have some perspectives on a lot of things. If you remember, a few years ago, there was an incident in where a company had been set up that was a fake company, sort of a front. The address wasn't real or whatever. And they had gotten a CCC license, and it was basically sort of a front for Tractable. And CCC and Tractable sued each other. Mitchell was involved in it in a couple of ways. And so that went back and forth for a very, very long time. I believe that finally settled. But CCC does have some exclusions. We'll just call them that, like an insurance policy. They have some rules in their user agreements of what types of businesses can, you either can or can't get a license. I don't have a CCC license. When I read through it, I can't make a case for how I would be a business that would use it. That's why I use WebEst if I have to do anything these days. Several ADAS companies, so these are companies that just do third-party sublet ADAS work from body shops, started reporting a couple of weeks ago that they were getting these cancellation notices. This is an email response from the Group Vice President of Market Operations for CCC, basically explaining to this ADAS shop that their airbag service, which a lot of these ADAS people if we go back and we think about ProTech, right? Um, the guy that started it, love that guy, was doing stereo installs. He got his start back in the days in the 90s when stereos were getting stolen left and right, and we had to have people do stereos. And then those guys progressed to airbags when that became the next thing. And then they progressed to ADAS technicians. But they got a notice that they were going to be turned off because you're not, it just says you're not a collision repair facility or body shop. You do not write estimates for collision repair. We do not knowingly allow mechanical shops or other service providers outside of body shops to have a CCC1 license. We cannot allow entities other than repair facilities to use our software as a condition of agreements with certain data providers. That one I found interesting. The only data provider I would think that would matter there is Motor, so that's where they get the data for the labor times. I was kind of hoping I was going to get something there. Like, who's the third parties? Like who repair facilities, because condition agreements with certain data providers. So I don't know if that was insurance companies technically provide loss data, and that's how like things work in assignments, whether that's open shop or whatever. And so I was wondering who that was, whether it's Motor or it's an insurer that in that case on those things. What's interesting to me here, and I think what's interesting to these people is the other thing that we wanted to know was, well, how did this get started? Like, was this some sort of like general business review where somebody said, hey, pull CCC licenses that have not uploaded an estimate within a year, or communicated a locked estimate within a year or whatever. If you're not writing estimates and sending them back and forth, and what are you using the program? Like it wasn't really clear whether this was organic. It seemed to be the only people complaining were ADAS people, which led them to believe that this was some sort of plan. CCC had partnered up with either an insurer or some sort of OE scan tool kind of thing, and they were seeking to inhibit the competition of people in that market, like that was just specifically targeted to ADAS people. That's the answer I didn't get. Obviously a company can have a user agreement. They can have rules for who can have their licenses. They can have that. And if it's organically applied across the board, that makes sense. Hey, we didn't know. We now discovered you. We did an audit. We found 200 and something people that had a license that were technically uploading estimates. And so we sent all of those people. Now, if it ends up being, we just went through and targeted ADAS companies specifically, that could be considered like an antitrust. It would be not in good faith of competition where you're trying to eliminate certain things. There is a large class action lawsuit or law firm that they just try to focus on antitrust. They've been, I think, it's a couple of years, they've been trying to find something on CCC. They found this one very interesting. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I didn't get an answer. I waited 2 weeks. I wanted to know more on it. If you're an ADAS company or a supplier, provider, whatever, and you got the same email that you were getting your services canceled, we'd love to know about it. If you're not in ADAS, you're just in something else, and you also got that letter, then that would be interesting to know, because then that would tell us maybe it's not just targeted at a specific industry. We're only hearing ADAS people complain about it, but that does not mean that that's only the people that are having the problems right now. So if you feel comfortable sharing your information and passing it along, we'd love to take a look at that. All righty. When I was very early in it seemed like this is sort of like a full circle moment. It was a couple of weeks ago we were reporting on Progressive's former CEO passing away in an accident in a Tesla out in Florida. He was sort of infamous, the arrest and some other things through his tenure. But I remember very vividly the year that Progressive went from 14th in insurance premium written to 4th. And suddenly this company that we were all making fun of because they were taking applications over the internet, back then we didn't, State Farm was very anti-internet, and still is a little day, that had a commitment to the field agents, and some other insurance companies have some field agent presence. But we said that was a terrible way to do insurance. It was going to be full of fraud. You're going to have, people insuring cars that don't exist and then turning in claims. And how are you validating what you're insuring? I mean, we had lots of opinions of why we thought we were better than them. But that big jump to four really scared a lot of people. And it caused the top three, specifically State Farm. I mean, that was very unnerving to us back then to see that happen. Well, so we started looking at claims differently. We started thinking about claims processing and claims adjusters and service in a completely different way because of that spike. But we said we would never lose number one. So back then it was 4 out of every 5 cars on the road were insured by State Farm. We just sort of like dismissed Progressive in a lot of ways. And well, now here they are. They're now the number one direct written premiums in 2024. So State Farm has been knocked off the mountain by the one person or the one company that I think we had a lot of opinion on about how they would never beat us. Progressive in 98, maybe it was 97, 98, I can't remember the year, got real aggressive as they started to grow their claims. They were figuring out where all the state farmers were eating lunch, and they would come in and offer you a job, and they'd offer you $10,000 more than what the farm was paying you. And we lost a lot of adjusters back then in those days. They would go jump fence and, hey, claims is claims, and I can make $10,000 more, I'm going to go. So there was this very much you hate to call it like high school gossip and picking on people, but we talked a lot of smack about Progressive back then, and so to see this come across the desk was very interesting. Progressive's been aggressive, I guess, to say the least, in their premiums. I can say I personally just put a lot of policies with Progressive. That's going to make them panic and go, oh my gosh, she's a policyholder now. But the rates were really good, and then they had RTA in the policy, and State Farm no longer had RTA in the policy. And if I'm going to have a claim, it's going to be a problem. So they've been, like I said, aggressive with how they're growing the market share. So if you're anywhere in the country, that we used to shops used to like actively try to, I want to figure out how to get more State Farm business. I want to get whatever. That's probably not the insurer that we really want to be putting all of our attention on anymore. There are consumer, I don't want to say consumer requirements, consumer wants, desires, needs, how they want to do business with anybody, even you. But as all of that continues to just kind of change, I guess they were ahead of their time, so to speak. So we probably were at fault for dismissing them or thinking that we had a superior way of being an insurance company and doing all those things. So now they're the number one insurer. I will be looking for what everyone else's response is. Geico was growing very rapidly. They've had pretty decent premiums for new business. So every insurer will offer incentives for you to become a new customer, and usually a lot of the weight of rate or the weight of cost of operations usually goes with long-term policyholders. So it's the more you stay, the more you're punished. It's kind of like, what was it? Was it internet or phone service? Like, was it AT&T like in the early 2000s? And if you switched your phone service, you kept getting like these $50 like gift cards, and you had people that were hopping like every 6 months changing service providers to get gift cards or whatever. And will insurance sort of get that way? I don't know. It's just it's a very it's a hard market right now for that. And so there's the incentives for new business. And if you've been with an insurer for a while, you're carrying the overweight of the load when it comes to the cost of overarching cost of running that company. We used to look at it. I think I was sitting with them one year, and they were telling me once a customer's been there for like 10 years, they don't change. They just start thinking it's just easier to stay with the same company, and they don't shop around, and they don't really. So then those people get more rate increases, and it would seem like, well, hey, if they stick around 10 years and haven't any claims, they should get the cheaper rates. And then maybe that would cut down on our loss index or whatever. But it is what it is. All right, here we go. I cannot stay quiet I tried to stay quiet on this one in a way, like I don't want to say I didn't care, but in a way it just wasn't part of my it wasn't part of my orbit. It wasn't part of my solar system or whatever. And then this email came out. Now this is not a dig on ABAT, right? Like I make no. I'm very transparent in how I feel about associations. I'm very transparent in how I've even felt about the tech. Like not the, I think the Texas Association has done some good things. There's just some people on the Texas board I don't like. And then on the SCRS board, there's just some people there I don't like either. So I'm very transparent in my feelings. And so this isn't necessarily a personal thing. That just seems to be, there's a lot that wasn't shared with the industry as a whole, but you were asked to do some things. And then there's some industry leaders that jumped in, and I'm thinking, you guys must have a short-term memory because you seem to have forgotten all the other stuff that has gone around. So earlier, a couple of weeks ago or whatever, SCRS issued a statement that they were angry at ICAR over some board seats. And they had attempted to put forth the executive director of SCRS, so Aaron Schulenberg, had attempted to present himself for a board seat, and that was rejected by the ICAR board for a variety of reasons, which we will talk about. Not exactly how it has been presented to you guys in the industry. I don't typically agree with ICAR. I mean, that's you guys know that pretty much. I agree with ICAR in this situation. And when you look at it objectively and not through the lens of some people with their own agenda, but when you look through it objectively, I think it's very easy to see why ICAR made the decision they did, or the existing board and the people that are on the selection committee or whatever, why they made the ruling they did. They're correct. And it should be that way. So let's go into it. So basically, the stance is that because well, we'll just dive a little bit deeper into what Aaron's request was. But Aaron wanted to take a position on the board for one of the 4 seats that are available for collision repairers. So ICAR did that. Then that was rejected because you're an association. You're not a repairer at that point. I'm not a repairer either. Then this sort of email starts coming. First, ICAR issued, or SCRS issued a press release kind of thing. The press picked it up, Autobody News and the press. I'm extremely disappointed in you that you just flat reposted the press release and you didn't do the dive into what's there and why and a little bit more. I guess, probably repair-driven news wouldn't have done an objective article either, but I miss the John Huter days. He was very much a good journalist and he would break things down for you. I am not John Huter, but I'm going to attempt to break some things down. And in this email, you're basically told, if the 2 people that have been proposed by ICAR will mean that all 4 seats on the board are held by MSOs. I kind of don't have a problem with that one either, but we'll talk about that one too. So what I wanted to do is if you got this email, if you had been told that you should be sending emails, it's like call your senator, calling ICAR, doing whatever, you need to have a little bit more information before you do that. You can still elect to do that if you want to, but I want you to have a little more information. So first of all, the dispute between SCRS and ICAR over board seats and how those board seats will look is not anything new. There's been several phases of this, and at one point, there was some discussion during a CIC as ICAR began to restructure itself, and who could or couldn't be on the board. And then the results of that sort of ending was a shop owner who had also been an SCRS board member out of Oklahoma, Gary Wano, ended up being on the board. So he's there for a while. 2019, the ICAR comes back and starts looking at restructuring sort of the board again. They had I don't know what the proper name for it was. It was almost like a governance director, but basically an attorney, and that was Margaret Nell, and she was part of WIN, and Margaret wrote the bylaws and did everything, and if there was ever anyone that was very much an attention to detail person, she was like, if I had to have somebody draw me up a contract, that's the person I want. And so what happened in 2019 was the proposal was that the board would change. There used to be 20-ish seats on the board. And let's be honest, you get that many people on a board, you're not going to get anything done. So they very intelligently said, look, we're gonna shrink this board from 20-ish seats to 13, and then those 13 seats will have very specific roles so that we can ensure that there's sort of this industry representation. So ICAR seeks to have feedback from what they would consider all segments of the industry. So insurers, vendors, OEs, body shops, manufacturers, whatever. They want to have all of this in there. Out of that proposal, 4 seats of the 13 were going to be designated for just collision repair shops. Now, I don't think it read the right way, but it was always intended that it was a body shop owner manager, an actual human being who was operating a body shop within the industry. And then they had within that some categories, right? So of the 4 of collision repair, there was one person that holds the seat for independent, one that has smaller MSO, middle to large MSO, and then the 4th seat was sort of an alternate. It could be any of the other 3. Couldn't be anything else, but it could be any of the other 3. And that's the one they may not have defined really well. What I did find interesting is that when you go back through that history, well, you look at where Kyle was at this point in the history of ICAR, and then kind of how that rotates along. All right, so what does that mean? So now we had this discussion. We went through this in 2019. We had shops on the board. So 2 of those seats would be MSO representatives, 1 would be an independent, 1 would be at large. Made a whole lot of sense. Historically, when it comes to ICAR, SCRS has been the one that's been very active in sort of defining and maybe even placing or encouraging or putting forward the person that would sit on that board as an independent, right? So we had Gary Wano for a while, great shop in Oklahoma. Had a relative that had a claim in Oklahoma City recently, and that's who I recommended that they go and use, right? So it's a well-known, well-run shop. The purpose is that it's body shop owners that understand the nuances of running a body shop at all the different sizes, because whatever ICAR decides to do must be implemented across a large scale or a cross section of the industry. Bob's Autobody has to work just as well as it works at Calibers. Now, this email comes out and basically it has this sentence in it and says, if Paul Krause or Ryan Downs are allowed to be the 2 new ones, wait, there's 4 seats, but we got 2 people. What does that mean, right? Then all 4 seats will be held by MSOs, and it is our opinion that that is not representative of the collision repair industry. Well, that sounds good, right? Like if you're just looking at it from the outside and you're an independent body shop, you're like, well, hell no, right? Like, well, I don't want all 4 seats to be an MSO. But there's some things they didn't quite tell you as to why those 4 seats would be for MSOs, right? So the one thing that they just sort of forgot to tell you is the reason it would be all 4 is because of this guy, Barry Dorn. So Barry Dorn is a former executive on the SCRS board as well, had a body shop in Virginia, and he sold it to an MSO. So Barry was occupying and still does the seat on the ICAR board that is for the independent repairer. Now, I have not been aware, nor have I seen anywhere where SCRS has recommended or suggested that Barry give up his seat as the independent collision repair representative, considering he is no longer an independent collision repairer. He himself now is part of an MSO. I didn't see that. I just see them talking about Paul and Ryan. Nobody's mentioning that this other 4th. ICAR and the existing leadership and board also have not asked Barry to give up his seat. They're probably thinking, whatever his thoughts, feelings, and opinions were, but when he was originally elected to the board, are probably still his thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Just because he sold his shop, his frame of reference, his experience level, what he's willing to speak of doesn't change. So if it is in fact SCRS's or ABAT's opinion that all 4 seats are from an MSO perspective, then one of the simpler things to do would then have Barry vacate his seat, since he is no longer the independent repairer. Now, the 4th at-large seat is through the MSO thing as well, because that seat was sort of always could be any of the 3. It was be a floater or whatever that we could have. But I do want to make sure that shops understand there is still, if we think about this objectively and not personally, there is still somebody on the ICAR board right now that probably thinks feels, acts, and still works at. I think they just rotated off the SCRS board as an independent repair. So I can't imagine that as soon as the day Barry inks the paperwork to sell his shop, he suddenly starts thinking completely differently and would start acting and behaving differently upon the iCar board than what he behaves now. So to say that all four seats are an MSO was that title. We'll just call that misleading. We probably should have explained that a little bit more. So there is still Barry still sitting there on the SCRS board. Their proposal, or what happened, so instead of putting forth a person that owns a body shop that should be, I guess, considered to be to hold a seat, the proposal was SCRS sort of went on their own. They proposed Aaron as the executive director of SCRS to be a person that would take a seat on the iCard board under one of the seats for the 4 collision repairs. Their position is that he represents independent collision repairs. I think in the ABAT email that was sent out to well beyond people outside of Texas, there's like a quote that says, "No one better to represent independent collision repairs than him." So what would that mean? Like they presented it up, iCar wrote back and said, no, that's the 4 seats are supposed to be for shop owners. You're not a shop owner. One, you've never ran a shop, that you've been an estimator and then executive director of association, but so that's not your key expertise level or knowledge point or reference. But associations not supposed to have any of these 4 seats. Since it became a thing, iCar then has said, look, we're going to go back and we're going to really flesh this out in the bylaws so that no association. So this isn't like they just want to, like iCar's making a change because they want to kick out SCRS. They're making a change because they want to, kick out associations. Like, hey, we don't want to have this vagueness in there. We need to be very clear because those segments are pretty, like we want 4 for body shop. We got 3 for OEs. We've got 3 for insurance companies. We only got 13 seats. There's only 13 votes to be had. So we want to make sure that no segment gets more power or there's an undue influence because one segment flies under the radar and comes up under here as an association or whatever. So then people would ask, Kristen, are you just being mean? Are you just being mad because you don't like them and they don't like you and you're just picking on the issue? And don't get me wrong, I can be petty. Like I always tell people, there's a guy on TikTok and he makes these videos and at the end of them he goes, petty-luya. Like it's just, I can be petty, like with the best of them. I was a claims adjuster for Christ's sakes, right? Like we learn at a really young age how to be petty. But this isn't about that. So what would be so bad with an association, or just in particular, specifically, why do you agree that iCar said no to SCRS? Well, a couple of reasons. So an association in general, not a good idea. But specifically, when we look at SCRS, when we look at where it's not a representation of the independent small collision repair. Well, how do you say that? Well, let's look at who their members are. So if I'm the executive director of an association and I'm supposed to represent my membership, that membership is also bringing in financial dollars, and those financial dollars pay for lots of things, whether that's events, whether that's the salary of the executive director or whatever. If you just take a quick snapshot, you can do a deeper dive, but if you take a snapshot at the membership of that association, there's MSOs, you got Caliber, you got Certified Collision, which I guess technically isn't an MSO. You've got CarStar in there as well, which that was one of the people in question on one of these 4 seats. And then you have an aftermarket parts group that's a member. Tong Yang is a member of SCRS. You've got 2 OEs. You've got probably more than that, but just a quick snapshot. You got Honda and Audi in there. The OEs have their own seats. They have their own designated seats on the board. You've got Integral down there. Trent is on the board. He has his own. They have their own category. They're on there. So SCRS crosses too many other existing categories that are within the voting membership. So in those 13 seats, I would say not voting membership, but within those 13 seats, right? there's some crossover. So are we going to say that we're going to put somebody in there that's going to completely forget about half of their membership, but only speak from one perspective? So all of these members are paying dues, right? They're part of it. They go to meetings, they go to whatever, and we're just going to forget about all of them. And when I'm here, I'm only going to speak from this perspective. That's a that's from I think from a legality standpoint, I think ICAR's internal legal team is like, yeah, that can't happen. Like it's just we set these 13 seats up so that they are somewhat siloed, so that they're only voting or speaking or acting for the particular segment of the industry that they're supposed to be speaking for. Like this one. I mean, maybe if it was an association that only allowed independent shops to be owners, and like once you sold your shop, you were kicked out. They didn't allow any membership sponsorship dollars from people outside of those independent shops that could, I would say, have an undue influence on, how things are presented. I mean, that would be a completely maybe a different story. But then if we did this, then where would we stop, right? If this association's allowed, then could ABAT put somebody on the board next year? Could the Rhode Island Collision Association put somebody on the board next year? And then who would they put? And then where does that stop? Like, it's just, I always tell people, when you think you want to do something, it may seem like a really, really good idea for you at the time. I used to tell my adjusters when we were looking at how we were going to apply exclusions or what we were going to do, seems really, really good for me right now in this moment. But then what's the long term of that? And then is that long term actually more negative for me or more negative for the industry as a whole? So if this association, if we allow an association that has a membership base that crosses over various segments or silos that existed in how they divvied up those 13 board seats, well, then why can't the Associate of Claims Professionals, they're an association, they're part of that, why can't they have a seat too? And if that's the case, well, then I just re-up my membership, and how about they put me up as a member to be on the board as well? Like I always tell people, I was laughing when this first came out. I got a couple of phone calls and everybody was like, are you going to talk about it? And I was like, no, I don't really have any plans to. This seems pretty cut and dry to me. I agree with them, because who the hell would want me on the board, right? Like if an association or whatever, I could fill out some paperwork, pay an attorney, and I could turn Collision up into an association by next month if I wanted to, I guess. Or I just pick up the phone and call the insurance associations, go, hey man, I need your sponsorship. I'm going to apply for such and such, right? I mean, at least I got a claims background. I got a shop background. My dad was an independent shop owner. We had a body shop as a family until we sold it. I guess I kind of meet the same definition of Barry. But I also have an insurance claims background, executive in that level. Oh, and I ran a training department, and so that's kind of what ICAR does too, is they develop training. So I mean, hey, I think I'm overqualified, right? But I don't think I belong on the board of ICAR. I don't think that's good for the industry. I don't believe that a lot of people have that ability to step back and go, just because I want it for me doesn't mean that it's a good thing for the next time there's a vote or the next time there's memberships. And then were we encouraging every silo that's represented in those 13 seats to then push for their association to occupy a seat in another level of one of the silos? So I think we have to think about the broader picture of that and what that looks like. That's why I agree. I think ICAR made the right call. There's been a lot of people on the board I don't like personally. I've been a lot of people on the board that I don't think are that intelligent. Or that good for the industry, but they got on there, people vetted them, they applied, they're on there, and they check a box, right? And I think those 4 seats should be actual body shop owner operators within that. If we don't want 4 MSOs, then take a leadership role and ask the guy who sold his shop, who's no longer an independent body shop owner, to give up his seat. But I think even I would agree that I don't believe how he thinks has changed, and I think he probably would be pretty, what's a good word? I don't want to say good at it, but effective at occupying that seat and not suddenly behaving differently or acting like an MSO. So I think the way that this was pitched to you guys was a little misleading to make you think that, you're being overtaken here. But in transparency, I also want to tell you, um, it's a lot of money to be gold class, right? And for those of you that are doing it, it's a lot of money every year. And when you lose technicians and you're trying to play catch up and keep certifications and do whatever, it's a lot of money. I'm not so sure. I'm not okay with all four of those seats being MSOs, because those guys are spending a lot of money. And I think they're very interested in finding ways that still get the training the right way, but do it at a reduced cost. And right now in this economy and what shops are facing, particularly the independents, cost is a huge deal. We all want to train, but we don't want to go broke training, right? So I'm not so sure it's not a good thing if for the next X number of years there's 4 MSO seats in that repair section, because I know they are very cost driven, and they're having to constantly, I guess, weigh the scales of what they need to be doing internally to keep themselves up to date. That's not part of iCar, and what they need to be doing with iCar. And I don't know. I think sometimes the people that have the biggest wallet in the game have the most to lose, and then they're the most inspired to do some things. So personally, it might not be a bad idea. I don't know. I would have let that one played out if it was me. But so some other things in this that are very interesting. Everyone's being told that they need to write in. They need to write in a candidate or whatever. I'm not aware that that is an option under the bylaws for you guys to do a write-in candidate. This isn't like a presidential election or whatever where you can write in an additional candidate. I'm pretty sure that if they're not on the available list, that's it. So even if you guys wanted to do that, I don't think that can happen. Also, just because you're a member of iCar doesn't mean that you get to vote. So I think there's I'm not sure if there was confusion in the writing of the email or there's just some possible confusion in the interpretation of the email. But there are members of iCar and there are voting members, and those are two different things. So just because you may be a member, your shop's been platinum or whatever, it does not necessarily mean that you are a voting member, and that you have the ability to, I know that you're being told to call here and urge them to review whatever. My personal advice from someone sitting on the outside of it, I don't want to say the outside of this, but if I think through the insurer lens and how they look at this board and some other things, you don't want associations on it. Because once you open that up, you're asking them to put their associations on it. You're asking the OEs to put an association that represents them on there. Nobody wants to be on a board. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of time being on the iCar board. There's some other boards in this industry you can be on that don't take up a lot of your time. But being on the iCar board takes a lot of your time. It's a huge commitment. And so a lot of people want to put that off on somebody else. Yeah, we pay that guy. Let him go do it. It's, flying out to Chicago and having the meetings and doing whatever. It's just too much. I don't want to do it. Totally get that. I do know that where we're sitting with who we have is because nobody applied. So for those of you that are going to type on your little keyboard and fire off an email of what you think somebody else should do, you probably are to fill out an application and get on the board, right? If you want more independent repairers or more of an independent repairer voice, apply. Get on there, click the link that was in that email and apply and put yourself on the board. But if we allow people to delegate their responsibilities or their voice to an association, then that's going to happen to everybody. Insurers will do it, whatever. And then that relationships and that communication that's supposed to happen in those board meetings where we put all the stakeholders in a meeting room and they have to be respectful and professional. There's probably another reason why I shouldn't be on the board either. But then that's going to be gone because it's just going to be association reps, which then it's just like the Senate, where it's basically a bunch of damn lobbyists that show up every day, and the senators hardly ever show up to even cast their vote. And we can see how well that's worked in politics. So, I'm behind iCar on this one. I think it was the right move. I know it hurt some feelings. I know there were some people that thought they were just shocked that they didn't get their way. Well, we had an OEs agree and sponsor us, and we had all these things. I get it. I just don't think it's good for the industry. And the flip of that is that, well, then the next move is, well, I'll do it. I'll get Larry sponsored and have Larry on the board, or whatever. Like, um, I think we would all agree that's probably a bad idea too. So there's the rules are there for a reason, and the intent was there. And I think to monkey with that intent, and then to act flabbergasted because you didn't get the reception you wanted, and then to try to inspire the industry to like it's a bad thing, and then completely leave out the fact that one of your former board members is actually still holding a seat in ICAR as well. Just a little misleading. So now you have all the information and you can do with it as you please, right? All right. What's next? Okay. This one kind of shocked me. I don't think it shocked me in that like everything in this industry, everything evolves, right? And it evolves more rapidly than it ever did. I mean, like I think when we all saw like Blockbuster go out of business a long time ago, we were like, oh my God, that was huge. But everything it evolves so much and changes over time. But if we think about the economy and where it's at right now, and I think about how many people are actually looking for jobs and trying to fill jobs and whatever, I did not see Monster and CareerBuilder.com going bankrupt on my bingo card for the month of June. So that one actually sort of surprised me. Now, I can tell you in the past, I've used Monster for jobs I've had here, and I've used Monster for clients to try to fill specific niche things. And man, it got expensive. I think at one point it was like $600 a posting. And I know they were saying, oh, look at all of the things that we do. But I didn't get really great results. I didn't get good candidates for it. I got a lot of spam out of it. I think people are saying they get a lot of the same on Indeed or whatever. So that market is shifting everywhere. But like I said, I didn't see it coming. I mostly didn't see it coming because for the last year, I've been spending a lot of money building a job board. And I'm like, well, shit. I mean, which was ironic because it's been fraught. Like I wanted to build a job board that didn't look like anything else out there. And so I thought, well, realtor.com, like I loved realtor.com. You know, you look for jobs on a map, or you look for houses on a map, and then you can drill in and you can pull up the house, and you can look at all the pictures of the house, and then you can look at this information on the neighborhood and its school systems and all of those things. So I was like, I'm going to build a job board that's like realtor.com, right? We're going to be able to drill in the applicant. Like if I'm Bob's Body Shop and I've got a job, the applicant should see more than just the job description. Like the job, it's not a classified ad. Here's a picture of the shop, and here's a picture of the inside of the shop, and here's a picture of our equipment, and here's a picture of our break room, and here's a picture of the city. And we had one posting one time in Utah, and they uploaded a video that the Chamber of Commerce of that town had made, and it was like all the skiing and outdoor activities. I was like, yeah, this is what a job description should look like, right? Do I want to take that job, and what are the things available to me? I believe this industry sort of shifted a little bit. It's not just cut and dry. What are you going to pay me? I mean, people are thinking about things in the bigger picture. Okay, sounded good. Sounds great, right? Doesn't it? Yeah. Turns out it was way harder to build it than I thought, and way more expensive to build it than I thought. And then you get so far down, it's sort of like building a custom car. You're like, just whatever. Here's another 20,000, finish it. So as that same day that I get this little thing that Career Builder's gone broke, I get a thing from the web developer that says, hey, your website's ready again. And I'm thinking, well, shit, right? So, but it is up and running. We tried to break it, and we haven't broken it. So we're pretty confident now. We're going to tell you. So for the last year, you guys haven't heard me talk about the job board anymore because we kept breaking it. And then when we didn't break it, we had Vive Collision help us, and they broke it, which was really wonderful. But the job board is back up. We think we got all the bugs fixed out of it. It's $20.25 if you want to post a job, and basically that's just to recoup the cost. That's all I've got it done. I don't think anybody should get rich posting jobs. I've seen some people posting some of the industry job services are anywhere from $75 to $100 something. So $20.25 just because that sounded cool because it's the year 2025. No other reason than that. And you can post a job and be ready to upload your pictures and do some things. It'll be up until we break it again. So if it hits a volume issue, but we've posted, and Melanie has worked very, very hard on this in the background. And the website guy, I know, I don't talk to him because Melanie and Holly came to me and said, if you want to get this done, you should shut up because you're pissing the guy off. So they took over it, and so it's up and running. So if you've got a job that you want to post, get in there and post it. If you're an MSO, we're just going to call this MSO day. If you're an MSO and you got a bunch of jobs you want to post, reach out to Melanie. Shit, we'll post those for you for free. Just I want to see if we can break it again before my contract with this particular web developer runs out. So pretty selfishly asking for some help in that department. All right, this one caught my attention last week. I'm not a huge fan of these scan boxes. I understand why they need to exist, and I know some are better than others. We've tested a few here and there over the last couple of years, and of course we're like, it's not even close to being right? But there's some interesting applications for them. We had an OE at one point that was trying to figure out on lease turn-ins, like how to figure that out. And I thought the rental car application was pretty cool. Like you have these rental cars. At one point, I've talked to Enterprise about you're turning these cars at these airports over sort of fast. It's really really hard to know when you actually discover, when you finally pay attention and go, oh shit, there's damage on the car. Who had it last? Who really did it? What this was. So I think this is a good application for that, for rental cars. But what I thought was really interesting here was the guy explains his experience with it, and basically he gets this email that says, hey, you brought your car back, it had a scuff, we've decided the scuff's $440, but if you pay it within the next 48 hours or 72 hours or whatever, we'll give you like 30% off. And he talked about how there was really no way to get a hold of a human. By the time, if you disagreed, they basically would tell you that it's going to take about a week or so before somebody gets back on you. Well, then the discount's gone, obviously, at that point. Which to me, I thought, well, what's interesting to me is how many people will pay this, because it seems relatively low. There's a barrier to getting to a human, and you get a discount if you pay quickly. And then I'm looking at that from a claims perspective and going, cash flow is huge for collision repair, right? If I'm waiting and waiting and waiting on supplements and payments and whatever, that cash flow, I've got to order parts for the next car and paint and all those things. So cash flow is big. I just started tinkering around, like this tickling in the back of your mind going, is there an application here, or is there some pieces of what Hertz is doing here that could be pulled out and sort of applied to collision repair? I don't know. I hadn't thought about it that much. I mean, I was sort of traveling last week, and then I had to go to Nebraska and talk this weekend, and then it was the week before my vacation, so I was like, I'm not really thinking about anything too much right now. I may think about it more later, but you think about it. Like, is there something there about if there's incentives for things to get done faster, paid faster, would that help shops with turnover? I know that our collision, our cash flow. Ooh, I need more coffee. And I know there's some shops and some people that have been experimenting with the drive-through boxes, et cetera. So we'll just continue to see how that technology evolves. I did look at the pictures, if you go read through this article, and I was like, $440? Hell no! And so that's when my old adjuster mentality kicked in. So very interesting, something to definitely go and read. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting. We talked last. Was it last? I skipped a week because of I had to go sit second chair in a deposition last Monday. So, and I'd forgotten about it. It was technically on the schedule. I was like, shit. I woke up and had to go put on a suit and look respectable and professional, which is one thing I really hate doing on a Monday morning. But we talked about insurers and more litigation around total loss and salvage and total loss fees, et cetera, and what that's happening. This case popped up in Massachusetts. There's been over the last couple of years, there's been a lot kind of popping off and happening in Massachusetts, which is really interesting. It was always sort of a quiet state. It's very isolated. It has some very unique rules. In corporate, Massachusetts wasn't necessarily part of a region that was handled within corporate from like a corporate claims executive or a consultant or whatever. It was kind of like its own island. Like Massachusetts was an island, and then the PIP states were a little weird. But it was, This is not a body shop. So I want to be clear on this. This was not a salvage fee dispute from a collision repair shop. This was a towing facility that had a vehicle that was put on hold by the police it was a death claim. And the vehicle was on hold for retention for probably either possible trial, investigation, etc. And it ended up being on hold for 3 years. And so when this 3-year hold is over, this particular facility had a $118,000 bill, which, the other side of me is going, only $118,000 for 3 years? Well, I got to work on this place with their fees, right? Like, we got to figure out something. But it's your typical abandoned, non-consent tow facility or whatever. However, here's what's interesting. After the 3 years, the insurance industry, or the insurance company, Liberty Mutual, comes back and says, look, we'll agree to pay the $6,400 tow bill that was on it because the tow would have been owed regardless, right? The tow was part of the initial loss. So, all right, I'm on the same page with them right now. And then they had taken possession of the title. They had estimated that the salvage value, so maybe they had a certified salvage bid, to be $3,302. And so they said, we're going to pay the tow bill, we'll give you the title, and abandoned that $3,302 value to you. The towing facility said no, they wanted the full $118,000, and they sued the insurer. So things get a little icky when you sue an insurer, right? Like, they didn't technically, they didn't own the car when it caused the wreck, they didn't do whatever, so what do they legally owe? But what was interesting is the attorney did sort of a good job. Should have thought through a few things a little bit more, but I wanted to talk about them. I actually mentioned them, and I talked about these this weekend. So for you Nebraska folks that were with me Saturday at the Speedway Hall of Fame, which, by the way, that place was amazing. I didn't even know that existed. I hadn't been in Lincoln, Nebraska since maybe 98, 99. There's a huge hailstorm. I can't remember what year it was. I think I had 50, 60,000 claims. I didn't remember the football stadium being that big. I didn't remember downtown. Like, I'm thinking this whole town looked completely different. But I had no idea there was a Speedway museum there. It was like 200,000 square feet of race cars. So that place was awesome. A wonderful place to hold an event. If you're a shop group, if you're your insurer, whatever you are, and you're looking for a place to hold an event, that was awesome. I highly recommend it. Now, it's not easy to fly into Lincoln. You're pretty much going to fly to Omaha and drive over. But great venue. All right, I digress. I'm off the topic. All right, so we talked about total losses, and we talked about negotiations on Saturday. And in total losses, one of the things that always comes up is when an insurer tries to abandon a vehicle to you, what are your options and how do you handle that? Because we don't want just a bunch of cars getting abandoned, right? And insurance companies going, I don't want to pay those bills. Two of the things that are pretty much that can come into play. So this attorney did a really good job and mentioned them. And you guys can go pull this article and read it and kind of talk about why the court ruled against them, what was wrong with their argument, so you don't make the same mistake. Unjust enrichment is always a really good one. Basically, does the party, in this case Liberty Mutual, do they benefit by abandoning it? And so a lot of times when an insurer wants to abandon a car with body shop, they do benefit, right? Like, so typically I have to settle the total loss. I have to pay all the fees, the towing, the whatever. I have to go pick the car up. I'm not guaranteed of what the car's worth, right? Now I take it back to my salvage yard, IAA, Copart, whatever that is. I have to pay them to process it, and they have a sales or a handling fee. That may be $250, $300. I'm sure it's gone way up over the last couple of years. And then we're going to sell the car. If there's any proceeds, we will credit those proceeds back, right? A lot of times, for some severely damaged vehicles, it cost me to handle the salvage. So I have to pay for the ACV, and then I go in the hole by the time I pay to go pick up the car, bring it back to Copart, sell it, and get whatever I get for it is usually less than what I've spent. Occasionally, all right, some newer model vehicles, I do okay. I may get $2,000, $3,000 in positive cash flow that I can credit back to the policy, but it costs me a lot. Hell, if I can just abandon cars, I don't have the negative. I got to pay the ACV anyway, right? But if I can prevent me as a company from losing money by handling the salvage, hot damn. And so the principle that has always kept insurers from doing that, if that worked, then why haven't insurance companies been abandoning salvage all this time? Unjust enrichment is one of those. So when in the course of my career, when I've lost some lawsuits because hey, I think I got a way of doing this and I think I'm pretty smart, and you do it and you go to court and a jury tells you no, you're not very smart at all, and you lose. That's one that's out there. So it's something for shops to think about. We always like to present the case of is the insurer doing this because it's to their financial betterment, or are they doing it because it's what's owed under the policy, et cetera? Promissory estoppel is another one. That one comes into play if you've done your job as paperwork. So this attorney tries to basically allege that there was an exchange of a phone call between the towing and storage facility and the adjuster, in which they basically say, you were aware, you didn't do anything to stop it, and so because you didn't, you at that moment in time, you accepted everything that was going to happen after that. And the judge basically ruled that nothing changed with what, like there was nothing as that was a part of that conversation that changed the way that you were handling or doing anything, and so there wasn't anything there. So for shops, a couple of things to remember. You have to have this communication process. I've got a shop that let me in on one that's going on in Ohio, where Geico is trying to say they don't owe a bunch of stuff because it's unreasonable. And there's an email exchange between the shop and a Geico total loss representative, in which that total loss representative writes back and says, hey, all your fees and everything appear to be in line. We're going to get this set up to be paid. Okay, there you go, right? Like that worked out. That was a really good email in their favor. But you've got to have those regularly emails where you're communicating, and then you have to be putting that onto the customer. So estoppel happens when the customer incurs that financial detriment at the direction of the insurer. So there's some keywords and some things that we say when we're communicating every 72 hours about how the fees are developing, and the reason why we're carbon copying the adjuster, the insurance company, et cetera. Are those two little principles. So I thought it was just really interesting that they were brought up in this case. It didn't go in favor. So Liberty Mutual obviously was found not to owe this. And so a little disappointing. The storage facilities attorney was almost kind of right there. That's usually why it's really good when law firms have someone that they consult that has sort of a claims background that can sort of, kind of walk them through how other things will be pitched and seen by the other party. But that's a really good one to Google. Go read the whole thing and then think about, how you might, let's say you get suddenly an insurer does start to abandon cars with you. Well, you're going to want to put your foot down and get that stopped pretty quickly. But would you have the right paperwork, the right communications, the right forms? Would you have everything that you would need to be able to put your foot down and not end up like the shop? Or I had a shop stop me after the Nebraska meeting, and he had 3 or 4 cars that had been abandoned to him. And of course, they're not good cars, right? Right. And so he was like, well, what do I do with them? Right. So we talked through that. Okay. Let's go back to the peel wheel. So if you go back to the website and you go on to the, click through the store and go through equipment, we got a lot of things there that you can buy. By no means is this a profit center. We're not tearing up the world on this. There's SATA airbrushes in there. There's some things that Vitech has made available. Vitech's a product out of NCS. Some things that they have that I thought were just really cool. I like their window cling. I like the door edge guards. And a lot of you don't have an NCS within your market to be able to get those things. So I was like, yeah, I'll just throw them on the website. There's some Celette products in there. We've got the Eagle. I'm working with Celette to get the tram gauge, the digital tram gauge that works with the web tools right now. We'll have that up for you as an easy way of getting it. And then we added the peel wheel. We have collision edge products, the tape thing, the dent board. Here's a tech that works every day as a technician in a collision repair shop, and he invents something that made his job easier. It's like an eraser wheel on steroids. This thing is really good. We kept trying to make some videos for it. Just in full transparency, we don't R&I a lot of shit. So our need to and we don't repair a lot of things either. So our need to remove adhesives, remove adhesive off the back of moldings and whatever, that doesn't come up frequently. So we kept kind of running into a barrier there, and Jason was trying to go back and forth from Wisconsin. So that was a barrier there. But it's a fantastic tool. It has great longevity. It's just so cheap, and it just will help you do everything. Now, he's done a great job. He does not need marketing help. He's got great social media around this. He does demos because he's a tech every day, so he's using it every day in his own work. So you can go online and take a look at how it works. You can order it, I think, directly from Ryan himself if you want to. But if you want to just hit the website and let us handle it as well, we're happy to. We don't make any money on this. I think all said and done, there's like $3. And so we'll just throw that in the beer fund for me, so that keeps me sane, maybe toward the end of the year. So buy a pill wheel and contribute to Kristen's year-end beer fund. I don't even do the pizza. Why waste pizza? Why would you want to like make like just go straight for the beer? I mean, that's just me. Oh wait, I'm supposed to be professional, I think, right? All righty. So next episode or next object, what's on the shelf? I probably should have done that a little sooner. I should have thought through it, but here we go. What's on the shelf? This was really, I guess, kind of like a little a memory thing. As we were cleaning out the shop, growing up, we had the state police account. We fixed the state police cars. We had the city police account, and then my dad worked with the Lone Oak Sheriff's Department as well. But as a volunteer sheriff, it was the mounted patrol, so we rodeoed and had horses and did lots of things like that. So he had that. I had thought if you go way up at the top, there's a shadow box that is his. One of his badges, the gun he wore when he was, a sheriff. Like, he built this really cool shadow box and everything, and I took it. And I had his other badge, and I thought I had lost it. So I was hiding it from my mom. That I was waiting, and she was going to ask if I had the badge. I was going to have to lie to her, but I thought I had lost it. And then when we were cleaning and moving out of the shop, we found it. So it sits on my typewriter back there. But that was my dad's sheriff's badge. So in addition to body shops, there was always a lot of cops around my house, and there was always a lot of adjusters. He would have these. We had a pool, and we had a bunch of acres, and he would have these parties. That was the 80s and early 90s for claims adjusting was awesome. He'd throw these parties, and we'd have 150 people at the house, and there'd be a bunch of insurance adjusters, claims managers. There'd be other body shop people. There'd be paint company people. Uncle Al, the jobber, was there in all of his glory of his tracksuit and his gold chains and his nugget pinky ring. And then there was lots of cops there all the time. So that probably, I don't know, it was a good thing because I caused a lot of trouble as a child. So those of you listening to this that remember what I was like as a teenager know, yeah, it was probably a pretty good idea. She had lots of cops around all the time. But yeah, so I always wondered if he did it because he loved being a cop, or he was like, somebody's going to have to keep an eye on Kristen. So I'm going to cover my bases. I got the state police, I got the city police, I got the Lone Oak Sheriff's Department. She's covered. My brother was perfect. So if any of you in Texas know my brother, I don't think he ever caused a day of trouble in his life. I made up for him. It was all right. So I did everything to give my parents gray hair. Probably I have to take some responsibility for maybe, a heart attack and a stroke here and there for whatever. But anyway, so yeah, that's what's on the shelf back there. Lots of things as we moved out that, you have 13 years in a place, and you shove stuff in corners and everywhere, and you start to move out and you're like, oh, I remember that. I have some pictures that I found from like one of my very first cat sites. So 1997 catastrophe response, hail claims. So I may show what I happened to look like in 1997 as a little bitty old estimator running around. All right, well, I appreciate it. I know this was long. We talk about it all the time when you see news. Just understand that there's always, dig a little deeper. This industry is really, really good at just kind of like giving you like a flash in the pan and not like telling you the whole story. So before you get all reactive and you jump in on something, you just may want to think about the whole thing. If you do choose to exercise your voice, well, then that's awesome. Whatever you feel about is what you should do. I was talking to a shop last week, and we disagree on some things, and I was like, that's awesome. Disagreement, discourse is how we get progress in anything, right? If everybody agreed all the time, nothing new would ever happen. But I do want to strongly encourage, if you're an independent shop and you're concerned or you want to do different things with iCar or whatever, then apply to be on the board. Like, like pony up. Put your time and your mouth where your keyboard is, so to speak, and get involved. Because just, if you don't think anybody's saying the right things and we're not getting the right places, I jump in, right? Like, the more voices we have, the better off we are. I'm okay even if I don't like the voice, because at least if we're disagreeing on something, there's a discussion being had, and then people are listening at that point. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go enjoy a vacation, my first one in 8 years. The kiddo finally committed last week for football, so I'm done with football until football season starts. But I'm done with recruiting and visiting colleges. No football camps for him this summer. We don't have to do that, and so we're just gonna go have a regular old vacation, which means I'm gonna pop up somewhere with a book and probably not move for 3 or 4 days, and I'm gonna have a really lovely selection of drinks and cigars. And I won't even be on my email much, but if you need me, reach out to Melanie or Holly, and tell them if it's an emergency or not. If you need me to, I'll stagger inside to a cabana and call you. I cannot promise that I will give intelligent information or advice over the next 4 or 5 days. I'll see you guys later.